some of this. All right, thermostats and temperature control. We say cooling thermostats close on a rise in temperature. Heating thermostats close on a temperature drop. We can also use these switches to protect motors from overheating when they get too hot. We can use low voltage control to protect high voltage devices. Low voltage controls are smaller and switch electrical contacts faster than high voltage controls. Residential systems often have low voltage control. So let's just think about this for a minute. So if you go on a commercial job or a residential job, we are authorized with our state contractor's license to run control voltage anywhere and all. That's not the case for high voltage stuff. You would have to have an electrician's license for that. And that would be, with the exception of, we are authorized to run it from the disconnect to our equipment. But we couldn't go, not legally, go running a line from the breaker box across the house to an outdoor unit, hang a disconnect and put on whip. We could only go from the disconnect for the whip. But that's not the case with control voltage. It is safer to use control voltage, which we typically use 24 volt, and we usually say use 18 gauge wire with it. That might be a little overkill. I have seen some people do it cheaper with 20 and 22 gauge. But there's not, I'll be honest with you, thermostat wire smaller than that is sometimes a problem because it's so dainty. You go to pull the plastic off and you actually kind of cut some of the copper, and it doesn't take much bending to break it. And so typically 18 gauge is pretty good. Now, at that small, whether it's single strand or multi-strand, doesn't matter that much. Here again, we will probably use stay-cons if we can for this stuff too. So sometimes multi-strand works in a stay-con better, but you definitely don't want to take a stay-con just because you're cheap and in a hurry that is made for a number 8 wire or a 10 wire and try to cramp it down on an 18 gauge wire. It's just so big, chances are it's going to fall off. All right, so let me give you the symbols for this. This is not the circuits class, but this usually helps people visualize. So I have a switch, y'all, and I know y'all can't see it, but back on the wall there, we have a light switch. And if I drew that in a schematic diagram, it would look like that. We would have power flowing to the switch, and then if it closed, it would continue on. I might want to call it light switch. On our furnaces, that might be a door switch. You pull the door off, the door's not pressed anymore. But we know one thing, this is a manual switch because it has no flag. Now, and difference, this one's below it, and that one's above it. It doesn't make any difference on a manual switch, but if I put a flag on it, and a temperature flag looks like this, gentlemen. And so if I put a temperature flag here, or here, you know that this switch is not manual. It is controlled by temperature. And so I want you to look at the logic of this. These switches are controlled by temperature. If I add heat, temperature, I'm sorry. If I add heat, the acid sensible temperature, this switch opens, doesn't it? If I remove it, what happens? It closes. This switch here, if I add heat, it closes. If I remove heat, it opens. That's all you got to ask yourself. So this heater would be good for cooling. The room is nice and cool right now, but as it heats up, click. I'll let electricity go through to bring on my air conditioner. And we would call this one a heat one, okay? As the room got cooler and cooler and cooler, somebody's like, hey, well, I need some heat. It closes and brings on heat, okay? So these are, when we take a look at some switches here, so. Did I lose anybody on that symbol? Okay. I need to change this time of. And here we look at them on the PowerPoint, the heating thermostat. We say it closes on a drop of temperature and it opens on a rise in temperature. This is also good for safety. Let's say I have this going to the contactor and we put this thermostat switch on the discharge line. The discharge line gets so hot, let's say we put it at 250, we're going, whoo, that's hot. Opens up, cuts off my compressor, okay? Cooling thermostat closes on a rise. And you can see the flag, although they didn't do a very good job of it. Space temperature controls, low voltage. So low voltage, we only carry a small amount of electric current. Y'all, this is safe because, you know, you got a thermostat over there. If I have 100, we would call that a line voltage thermostat. If that was a line voltage thermostat, every time it closed or opened, we're going to see a gap, a spark. And, you know, that's not necessarily safe. Where, yes, there's a little spark and a gap with 24 volts, but it's much smaller, much, much less powerful. For the most part, we use mercury or silver coated contacts. We have a heat anticipator and a cooling anticipator on non-electric digital ones. And most thermostats try to control swing, overshoot, which is known as lag. And these kind of thermostats have a sub-base to make the connections. Let me take a look at this here. Now, right forward, not everybody's here. There's you one. There's you one. Now what you have is a base and a sub-base in your hand. A base and a sub-base. And this is how they would ship this. And we are really getting away from mercury-based thermostats, y'all. I mean, mercury is not good for people, and it's not good for the environment. All right, so what you have is a base that is screwed to a sub-base. I don't know if you can see it, but when you look at it, you probably got 2 or 3 or 4 screws. It depends on if yours is a heat pump. Y'all see that? Tiny little screws. And this would be covered, right? This is the last thing. But anyway, so the sub-base is mounted on the wall, an exterior wall, never an exterior wall. been specified by the code official, you always install it at a level of 5 feet. Okay? Now, like I said, they can change that. You may have somebody in a wheelchair, and that's too high, but typically 5 foot is what you're going to do. And you would put this on. It's very important that you level it, the base, because we're using a mercury. Digital doesn't matter, although it might be an eyesore. Now, here you make all your electrical connections. Do you see that? You know, there's wires. Y'all see these? Look at them. Look at them. Let's see. Well, you can't see them because they're underneath there, y'all, but if you could, you got terminals like G, RC, RH, A, B, W, Y, that kind of stuff, if you can see it. Okay. But I want to focus on right now, though, what you can see. All right. Do you see the mercury bulb? Now, do you see probably on the left side, there's 2 or 3 wires rolling into it. Y'all see that? Y'all, this is for cooling and heating. And inside there, as you manipulate it, you can see the liquid mercury flow back and forth depending on the level, right? Everybody with me?
Yep.
All right. When this thing flows back to the left, it makes 2 connections. When it flows back to the right, it makes connections, right? And so to the right, we would have, it's hard to tell it, y'all, but 2 metal probes in there for our air conditioning. And when the mercury flows over it, electricity can flow from the probe through the mercury to the probe. And when you flow it back to, move your handle all the way up for heat. See here? Move it up for heat, and you roll it over to this side same way. You got 2 probes there, one that lets the electricity come out, flow through the mercury, and to the other probe. And that's how it works. Now, do you notice how it is mounted on basically a wound up piece of thin metal? Y'all see that? It's sitting there on like a spring almost. If you look under it. That is actually 2 pieces of metal fused together. Fused together. It's a long piece of metal, y'all. Fused together, and they have wound it up. Now, one thing we found out about metal, when it's different, it heats. When it heats and it cools, it contracts and expands at different rates. And this causes warping. And what we have here is exaggerated warping by taking a long piece and rolling it up. We get a good bit of movement. If you had a lighter that you could put here, y'all, you would see this thing move because it's sensitive to heat. Does everybody look on this now? Look straight. Do you see a dial? Does yours have numbers? What does it say?
Let's see, 0.2, 0.3, 0.23, 1.2.
Yeah, mine goes from 0.2 on the right all the way up to
0.3 or 0.25.
Kind of hard to tell how high it goes, but anyway, do you see how it has a pointer? Right, y'all see that? Do you see how it also has one side that slides around and stays in connection with that very thin wire? Y'all realize that? No? this thing all the way
Yeah.
clockwise, it gets up to about 0.15. And then if I try to move it counterclockwise, I can cross over and get down to about 6.5, 0.6, 0.8. They're telling me I should be able to get up to 1.2. Y'all see what I'm talking about? So that's the end. Between, on mine, 0.12, and then there's a gap to the 0.15. It can't go any further. Y'all, does everybody understand what I'm saying? That's right. So they're moving, and it won't go past it. Now, y'all say, well, what's going on here? Y'all, we have what we call a variable resistor. If y'all took your cover off, and if you've got a screwdriver, you're welcome to take it off, but look at the back of this. This is the sub base, not the base. This is the one that screws down to it, right? Do you see right here, y'all, there's a little resistor. It is clamped down right there. I don't know if y'all can see that. You may want to take your base off, your sub base off. On y'all, it's probably going to be 3 little screwdrivers or a knife blade. It doesn't take much to take it loose. If you want, I probably got a little bitty screwdriver on my desk, and I got 2 or 3 glasses with little tools on there. The screensaver's killing me. You go, Mr. George. Yeah, when you're buying tools at Johnstone, sometimes you go, hey, do you have any of those free thermostat screwdrivers or shredder valve removers? Cause usually they kind of give those away if you're buying something. You know, because they've got advertisement on them and stuff. Not always. They won't come out, y'all, all the way. They get loose and that's it. That way we don't lose those doggone things. Trust me, they go everywhere. Alright, so first of all, look at your base. See if you see where I was talking about the letters, where we hook up the wires. Y'all see that? Still getting yours open. Kim, can you see that? There's 4 or 5 different ones, and some of them have letters.
A, Y, G, C, R, C, A, R,
W's, yeah.
I see those.
That's where this would be mounted on the wall. The thermostat wire would come out about 2 or 3 inches, and you would sit there and wire them around those lugs and tighten them up. Alright, so now, take your sub base and see if you see the resistor back here. Tiny little resistor. Mine's on a black wire, but you You can see it's a little solid state component. That's how it looks. Everything else is wire and plastic. Can you see it? Hold it up. Yeah, it's right by the red thing. To the about a centimeter from it. You see it being clamped down. Yeah. So that's the resistor, and this is the adjustable part. Now, y'all, I know most of you hadn't had circuits, but a resistor does this. It uses electricity and creates heat. So if I create heat right where this thing is mounted, what do you think is going to pick up that heat? It's not going to heat the room, is it? But it's going to affect my spring. My spring is going to be picking up false heat. Y'all with me? Well, I mean heat from the resistor, not from the air conditioner. I mean, not from the furnace. All right, so we call that a heat anticipator. And so that was very important to us. But before I move on and change this board here, let me just say this. Do y'all remember how the rules work for the power formula or the Ohm's Watt's law? And that is this. That's amp draw current. Amp draw current in a series circuit, which will be in for heat. Amp draw in a series circuit is all the same, y'all. Does that make sense? Like, let's say I have two things on this circuit. Power runs through one, then it runs through the other, and then back to neutral. They have to draw the same amount. If this one draws 0.5, this one draws 0.5. If I move this one up to 0.7, this one's going to have to draw 0.7 now. Whichever is the highest, they have to draw the same amount. They're not in a parallel, we add it up, but not in a series. So, what you do here is, if you've got a gas furnace, you go to your gas valve, and you look at it, and it should say what the amp draw is. It might say right on there, the gas furnace amp draw is 1.2 amps. Well, you would want to set your anticipator at 1.2 amps. If you set this anticipator higher, you may burn out your gas furnace because it's going to be running at a higher amp. Now, theoretically, amp draw changes based on voltage. And you may not have exactly 24 volts. You may have a higher voltage or a lower voltage. Hey, come on in. Pick up on this. He's got a screwdriver to help you take that apart. So, technically what you want to do is, you would want to run your furnace, run it through your amp meter, and get an actual reading. Because maybe it's not 1.2, maybe it's 1.0. Now, let's say you had strip heat, electric heat. You're using a sequencer. Well, you want to take the amp draw off the sequencer, okay? That's what our heat anticipator does. Now, let's look at why we want to use, why would they go to the trouble of doing it? Alright, I think we explained this, how the mercury will make the connection. If it comes down here, bingo, it connects those two, or the other way, makes those two. So look at our heat anticipator. There is our temperature switch, right? A heating switch. And this is the symbol for an anticipator, and this means it's adjustable. You could lower it or raise it. Now, first of all, y'all, first thing we ought to notice about this is, what happens if this is open? No electricity going through, right? However, if this closes, if we're calling for heat, what happens? The heat comes on, the heat anticipator comes on. Alright, so first of all, we know right off the bat that the heat anticipator does not bring the heat on early. It's off. It's not running. But let's say you set that thermostat for 75 and it's 70. And they both cut on. The furnace is working fine. The heat anticipator is creating a little bit of heat. Show him where the heat anticipator is on the back of his base. No, it's on the sub base. Sub base. There you go. Flip her over. Flip her over. Show the resistor on the back. Little diode creating heat. Now, you're at 74, y'all. You're at 74. If I go to 75, thermostat's going to cut off, right? What happens if it cuts off? Have you made heat? Is the furnace hot? Did the customer pay for it? And so we're going to run the fan and we're going to blow that heat on out for a minute or two. We're going to overshoot the target of 75, y'all. So what we do is we have this little fake heater there, and before it gets to 75, it goes, I'm about to be 75. It anticipates, and it cuts the furnace off before it reaches it, and that way we don't overshoot as much. Does that make sense? The anticipator, the heat anticipator, only comes on when the heater's on, okay? Now you don't see it, but you got a cold anticipator on there too. So, you write you down, Mr. Cobb. I saw you're on the table. It's excellent. So, a cold anticipator, obviously we can't make this thing get cold. It's heat. This is how a cold anticipator is set. First thing, there is no pointer here, right? This anticipator is fixed. It is not adjustable. Like your heat anticipator, you've got the dial up front. Okay, so we have a parallel circuit. When the cooling thermostat is off, now it has to be in cool mode. Don't you usually take your thermostat and go cool? That doesn't mean it's running unless the temperature is set right, right? So when it's in off, there's no power here. But you put it in cold mode, this resistor is on, creating heat. We're not calling for air conditioning yet. This is open. So what does that mean? Okay. So, once we put it in cool, we're creating false heat. Let's say the thermostat is set for 70. Okay? We're set for 70. Cooling thermostat shuts. Now, let me ask y'all how electricity works. Electricity can either flow through here or here when this is closed. Which one is less resistance? Here. There's no load here. It'll flow through here. This won't even heat. Okay? So we're sitting there, and the room comes from 75 to 74, we're cooling. 74, 73, 72, 71. We've got it set at 70. It's still in the cool mode. We hit 70, the thermostat opens up. It stops cooling your house. The fan will run for a minute, blow since you paid for that cool air. But the temperature begins to creep up, right? Because the cooling's not on. What it does is now the resistor's on, and so before you let the room get too hot, it anticipates that it's going to be hot and brings on the air conditioning a little early, okay? Does that make sense? Our anticipators, the cooling anticipator brings it on early, the heating anticipator cuts it off early, okay? And here, let's take a look at this. So, they have a little diagram here. Here's our temperature. We're monitoring from 71 to 78. We have time. We're in the heating mode. So, let's see. The temperature drops from 78 degrees in the room to 76. It continues to 73. Now, maybe I should stop there for a second. All right, do you see the cool and the heat switch on your thermostat, your base or your sub base, where you would flip it from heat to cool or off? Do you have it? Okay. All right, so let's say we're in heat right now. Now it comes down to what you set the lever to, that temperature. In this example, do y'all see 73? That's what they've got it set at. The temperature is set at 73. Now, how should I say this? So when it hits 73, you go, I'm getting cold, I want the heat on, right? But if the heater came on and warmed up the room to 73.1 and cut off, it wouldn't be on very long. And then it would fall to 73, and then it would fall to 72.9, and then we go, hey, come on again. On and off, on and off. And so we have what we call a swing in here, and that's 3 degrees with these kind of thermostats. You see that? What they're saying is, this thing's going to heat to 76. That's when the thermostat, you got it set at 73, it's really cutting off at 76. And it really cuts on at 73, on and off. It's not 1 degree on and off, because it would be on and off and on and off and on and off. But we still don't want to overshoot. So we're coming down. We get to 73, right? Our heat anticipator, y'all, has come on early. I mean, it's not coming on early, it's on. And it's creating heat, so it says, hey, we're approaching, and it gets it to cut off early. So we have here, we've got 2 degrees of overshoot, right? Is that what they call it? And then we swing back up here, cut it off 2 degrees. So you see how they do that? Overshoot 78 minus 76 is 2. Oh, pardon me. They consider this lag. 73 to 71 is 2 degrees. The differential, that's that 3 degrees. And we have a temperature of 7 degrees, a swing. Okay? Without that heat anticipator, it would be worse, y'all. Now, guess what? This is not something you have to have with digital. Digital cuts on and off where they want it. And usually, most of the thermostats, y'all, they'll say, how much differential do you want? And it may be adjustable from a half inch, a half a degree, up to maybe 2 degrees. It's up to you. They don't need a heat anticipator cutting it off early because it will not overshoot. It's built into the system, okay? But that's what we had to do on the older ones.
And you got one built into it at all.
Well, now?
And then you got to anticipate it inside it at all.
Yeah, like when they first came out with digital ones, y'all, we'd have to kind of program that. You know, I don't mean program it like I want it to come on Tuesdays. I mean program it like it had some selections, and they go, set the electronic heat anticipator at this, set the cooling electronic. Now that's just all built in. That's all built in. And we'll see on some of the more popular thermostats, once you hook it up, there are some stuff we have to go through to get it, in other words, set up for the user. Because that thermostat might be used on a heat pump or a furnace or this and that. And we have to go through it and make sure it's in the proper mode. All right, I tell you what we're going to do next time. I'll start here. This is not the circuits class, but I just want y'all to take a look at this, and we'll show you how inside one of these old thermostats works. You know, how by putting this switch here and putting this switch, what's going on, okay? All right, and I've got a new lab for y'all.